All right. So, but let's look at some of the attempts by the right to defend Brett Kavanaugh. Wait, before we get to this video, let's just look at the bus tour that's been going around. As you know, there was no reason for the Republicans to in any way think that Brett Kavanaugh would have any type of trouble with women. They just coincidentally had a crew of people who signed up for the Women for Kavanaugh tour. And if you look closely, almost half of them are actually women. The other half,
bending scene than you'd expect.
right? The majority of there are 6 women and 7 men.
Hi, my name's Dale. I identify as a female Christian who does not believe in rape or abortion.
There you go.
That looks like a fun bus.
I mean, first of all, I would imagine that bus could hold about 4 times the amount of people.
Hi, my name's Brad. I identify as a female conservative.
Tell me this, okay? Here's the thing. Here's the alternate theory about when I suggested to Hayes that they knew this was coming about Kavanaugh, that he had some problem with women. He said, well, that could be because there's concern that he may be overturning Roe v. Wade. But zoom back in on that poster that woman on the Woman for Kavanaugh tour is carrying. It is a Justice for Life Confirm Kavanaugh. And all of them are wearing shirts that say, I am the pro-life generation. I mean, if this was about trying to smooth over the issue of Roe v. Wade, that would be a very bad way of doing it.
It's counterproductive.
Slightly counterproductive. So I'm not convinced that's what was going on here. All right, let's look at some of the entries that take place in trying to defend Judge Kavanaugh. This, of course, was from last week, right? Just at the end of the week. This guy, this attorney, this is before the second accuser came forward. Here is on, I guess, Fox and Friends Weekend Edition, a right-wing attorney trying to debate the Kavanaugh accusation.
We only have a minute, and I want to be fair to all 3 of you. Quickly, each of you, how does this play out over the next week? Does Brett Kavanaugh get confirmed? We'll start with you, Brad.
I believe the judge will be confirmed. This is an act that alleges to have occurred when he was a juvenile, and fundamental to our system of juvenile justice is rehabilitation. And for him to have rose to this level, to be nominated to the Supreme Court, suggests that he's been rehabilitated, if in fact it is true.
First off, this is, we'll get to the circular reasoning in a moment. Let's just take the low-hanging fruit. Judge Kavanaugh is not being tried for this. Now, maybe there's an opportunity to try him for it, but he's not being tried for this. He's not being adjudicated on the, or cannot be convicted of a crime during this process. The question is it possible that he had enough proximity to what went on that makes him unsuitable to be a judge on the Supreme Court? Period. End of story. But the idea that there was no accountability for him as he moved through this process. Remember, after clerking and his mentor has had to leave the judiciary over sexual harassment claims, the idea that he could get through there becomes evidence in and of itself that he's righteous. Right? I mean, this is the way it works in the conservative mind. If you're rich, it's because God deemed it that way. And God would never deem a immoral man rich, so you must be moral as well. It's the same calculation. If you've gotten to if you've achieved this amount of success, could you become a Supreme Court justice if you had done something like this? Like, could you become president if you had done something like this?
Good point.
Obviously not.
It's like The Secret. Like, it's such a bullshit interpretation of Christianity.
Totally. And it's all about redemption. And it's all about this Christian worldview that, like, the children are innocent. So innocent that nothing they do can be held against them.
Unless they're black.
Yeah, I was
Unless
gonna
they're
say,
black.
I mean,
Unless-
if you
Big
want to flip
asterisk there.
this and have like a restorative view of justice, sounds good to me. I don't hear that coming from any of these people in any type of structural sense.
And the question's not even whether or not like he's been rehabilitated. And I think like somebody's actually going around saying like, even if he did this, the fact that there's no accusations as an adult shows that he has really turned around. But if what that guy says is true, that this happened when he was younger and he must be rehabilitated, why doesn't Brett Kavanaugh come out and say, I did it and I'm sorry? Like, I mean, at the beginning of this process, I said that if he'd said that, I would see him getting confirmed. And there being an argument to confirm him, at least in terms of that. I think there was a lot of other problems with Brett Kavanaugh that we don't talk about anymore. Never mind the fact that like all his huge personal debt seemed to go away in the 6
Baseball
months
tickets.
before. Yeah. But I mean, putting that aside, how can you say that it's irrelevant because it happened when he was a kid when he's saying it never happened?
They still don't have their strategy straight.
They don't. They do not.
Or they just don't care because they think they have the power to push this through.
I think they just don't care. They assume they have the power. They just don't care. They just don't care. And I bring you a supposed CNN focus group of women, 5 women brought together to talk about Kavanaugh. Now, I want you to hear this, and I want you to know that CNN said this was a focus group. What's the point of a focus group? To get the sense of how Republican women at large in general are perceiving this. We're going to take a sample, sort of a random sample of Republican women to get a real sense of what's going on in the Republican. That's the way they branded this segment. That's the way they led into this segment. Let's hear from these women, and 2 or 3, I think, are women of color. Let's listen to this segment.
A show of hands, how many of you believe Judge Kavanaugh when he says this didn't happen?
I believe him.
Believe him too.
I do believe him. I believe him.
How can we believe the word of a woman or something that happened 36 years ago when this guy has an impeccable reputation?
Pause it. That is Lourdes Castillo de la Peña. She is a Republican voter. How can we believe the word of this? God.
There was nobody that has spoken ill will about him. Everyone that speaks about him, this guy's an altar boy, a scout. He's, because one woman made an allegation. Sorry, I don't buy it.
But in the grand scheme of things, my goodness, there was no intercourse. There was maybe a touch.
Pause it. This is Irina Villarino. She is a Republican voter. That's the way she's ID'd.
Really? 36 years later, she's still stuck on that? Had it happened?
I mean, we're talking about a 15-year-old girl, which I respect. I'm a woman, I respect. And we're talking about a 17-year-old boy in high school with testosterone running high. Tell me what boy hasn't done this in high school.
Pause it. Just go back a little bit. This is Gina Sosa, just a Republican voter. Go ahead.
Tell me what boy hasn't done this in high school. Please, I would like to know.
Why would she come forward if this wasn't true? Because it has basically destroyed her family. She's had to move, she's gone undercover, she's gotten death threats. So if she's lying, why come forward?
She's also destroying his life, his wife's lives, his children's lives, his career. I mean, why didn't she come out sooner if she's telling the truth?
Why didn't she come out when he was going into the Bush White House? Why didn't she come out when he's been a federal judge for over a decade?
Why not have a thorough investigation instead of just the 2 of them, he said, she said?
Because it doesn't matter. It does not matter what everyone else has to say.
This is what happened, though, with Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. The FBI investigated. It took 3 days. Done. Why not now?
Well, this is not the same. This is a high school kid. I mean, it's not Anita Hill story.
Does something that allegedly happened some 30 plus years ago matter today?
You can't judge the character of a man based on what he did at 17.
And I would hate to think that 30, 40 years later, somebody's going to destroy your life because somewhere at some party, it's not right, but maybe you touch somebody the way you're
And
not
who
supposed
brought the
to.
alcohol for these
And
kids?
As women, though, do you have some sympathy for her for what she's going through?
No, I have no sympathy. And perhaps maybe at that moment she liked him, and maybe he didn't pay attention to her afterwards, and he went out with another girl, and she got bitter, or whatever the situation is. They're kids.
Everything.
Okay. Well, that last woman who just spoke, Lourdes Castillo de la Peña, has served on the National Senatorial Committee and hosted a 1,000 plate fundraiser for Ted Cruz's campaign at her home. Gina Sosa, who said all 17-year-old boys have done something like this, was a congressional candidate in the Republican primary this year. This year! Angela Vasquez is a community council member in Kendall and Dade County. These were not GOP voters. They were literally GOP operatives. It's all coming from James Surecki. He also goes on to say, it's odd to assemble a panel of largely Latina women in which most, if not all, the women are Cuban Americans, who are far more conservative and supportive of Trump.
Gusanos.
So, first off, it's fine to say, here's a focus group of female Republican operatives.
Here's a focus group of
To get a
professional
sense-
Cuban political operatives who are female and Republican.
Let's get a sense of what the Republican establishment, the female Republican establishment, thinks about this. But to pretend and brand it as a focus group of just Republican voters is simply a lie.
Did CNN get punked here? Like, what's going on?
It's weird. It's like CNN's laziness and wanting to act like, yes, we're getting it out in the community to hear what the community thinks. But they have these people in their Rolodex, right? That's where the laziness comes in. And these people, yeah, they want to be, I guess, I don't know. Do they want to be identified as Republican operatives? I mean,
no, they want it to make it. They want to look like we're just average. We're just average women. We don't have a huge agenda here. We're just average women. We just go by what we see.
we're not professionally invested in what we're talking about.
Right. It's not like we're professionals. Unbelievable.